Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us for this week's episode of Service Matters. We have a couple of really exciting things to talk about today. So I just want to go ahead and dive in, and I want to introduce you to a very special gentleman from Roseville. His name is Joe. And Joe Peterburs is a war veteran, and not just any war veteran. I mean, this man served in many wars in the Air Force. And actually, as you'll hear in the story, he sort of served in the Air Force through every evolution of that branch of the military. Very, very interesting. And this week, he turned 101 years old, which is just incredible. I mean, honestly, like, to live such a full life and to make it to 101, and not just make it to 101, like in a wheelchair and not being able to talk. I mean, you'll hear we interviewed this man. Like, he was sharp and cogent and just friendly and had great stories. And I really loved doing this story. It was very special to me. Unfortunately, I was not able to be there for the physical interview because I had to be here doing newscasts. But my photographer, Dan Franz, went and did a wonderful job with the interview. And I sent him some questions. And, it was such a great reminder, not only a story of service, but just a wonderful life story of somebody who never gave up and set goals and had the right priorities and figured it out early in life, I will say. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and play the story. And when we come back from that story, we're going to chat about it. Okay. I'll see you on the other side.
Just feels like any other day.
On November 24th, inside his Roseville home, Joseph Peterburs celebrated 101 years. His life began in the shadow of the Great Depression, one of 8 children learning to work hard and work together.
You had to really pitch in and know teamwork.
It was in those years he learned the values that would guide the rest of his life.
A sense of patriotism and loyalty and friendship, helping each other.
And by his early teens, he knew exactly what mattered most.
I knew what I would be willing to die for, and that was my country and my God and my family.
Joseph first followed his faith, joining the seminary at 17.
When Pearl Harbor happened, I knew I'd have to leave. On my 18th birthday, I was able to take a competitive exam for the United States Army Air Corps cadet program. And I passed that, and then started my long routine to become a pilot. Flew the P-51, of course, in World War II, and I also flew it in Korea.
There were years of danger, but also deep camaraderie.
They call me Colonel Pete as a term of affection, and I still hear from them from time to time.
And so Colonel Pete built a career of courage and service, earning the Legion of Merit, Distinguished Flying Cross, Bronze Star, Purple Heart, and dozens more. After retirement, he went back to school.
I got my master's degree and I did some teaching, enjoyed gardening. I retired in Colorado Springs, so enjoyed the outdoors.
And built a quiet life with his wife of 60 years.
She had a stroke and I was her sole caregiver for about 8 years, and then she passed away. That basically ended my life as far as I was really bad off.
Seeing his grief, his family brought him to Roseville.
It did change my life completely. I started a completely new life. I had the exhilaration of having 2 great-granddaughters. I had the privilege and opportunity to take care of them. But I'd be dead by now if I would have just stayed in Colorado Springs and lived in the house and sat around moping and talking to other old people about their aches and pains.
At 101, Joseph says it isn't his legacy that matters most, but the people who carry that legacy forward.
My best advice to the younger generations is decide what you're going to do and develop your standards early. They can just do their best, and the best will take care of everything else. And set a goal and concentrate on that goal, and don't let anything deter you from that goal. And it's okay if the goal changes, but whatever the goal you have, make sure you do your best at it, and don't be a slacker.
Right. Welcome back. Wasn't that such a great story? Didn't that just make you feel good? I mean, this man, Joe, he's just so impressive. And I'm actually going to let the whole interview play out. It was maybe like a 10 or 15-minute interview. And we'll go to commercial. On the other side of that commercial, I'm going to let that interview play out. So you'll be able to hear even more of his answers, but a couple of things that really stood out to me. I mean, this guy was studying to be a priest. He was in the seminary when Pearl Harbor happened. And so to me, that just reads as somebody who was wanting to serve people regardless, whether that was in the church or in the military or now as a great grandfather helping to raise his great granddaughters. I mean, it was such an inspiring story. And one thing that you'll hear when you hear that interview play out is that he says that he was kind of happy to talk about his life in general and not just his military service, because so many of his interviews, as to be expected with those sort of accolades, would be about the military. But I think that it's such a great reminder about how the military really teaches lessons and really teaches important important morals and values that go so far beyond the military service. You know, those pillars of gratitude and camaraderie and friendship and service and an obligation to make other people's lives better. I think that that obviously sort of shone through Joe's entire life and was very, very cool. So we're going to go ahead and take a quick break here. And when we come back, we're going to start with Joe Peterbur's full interview. All right, welcome back. I'm going to go ahead and let Joe's full interview play out right here. And you'll just be able to tell even more just sort of watching Dan ask the questions and hearing Joe's, Colonel Pete's full interview. You'll just be able to hear how engaging he is and just how impressive it is at 101 years old. I mean, we would all be so lucky as to have that sort of gumption at 101 years old. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and let Joe's interview play out right now.
We'll jump into it. What does it feel like to celebrate such a remarkable milestone?
101?
Yeah.
Oh, it just feels like any other day. I didn't expect it, and I don't feel it right now. I mean, I knew I'd, of course, slow down as I got older, but I feel good.
Awesome.
And it's not to me, it's not a special day or anything. I guess passing 100 was a big deal, but
I was going to ask, just out of curiosity, was 100 did that feel different when you turned 100?
When I turned 100, I was a little more quick on my feet, to say it that way.
Right on. That's awesome. We'll jump into a little bit about your military history.
Okay.
What branch of the military were you in, and what inspired you to join?
Yeah, okay. Well, I was in the United States Army Air Corps, and then they changed to the United States Army Air Force, and in 1947 we became the United States Air Force, separate from the Army, and those are the three various branches that I served. So, and what was the other?
How did you get your start?
Yeah. Well, I was actually studying to be a priest when the war started. I was 17 years old and at the Salvatorian Seminary in St. Nazianz, Wisconsin. And when Pearl Harbor happened, I knew I'd have to leave. My father had military, and I had two older brothers that were serving, so I was not going to let them outdo me.
Sure, exactly.
So I had to join. So I left the seminary, and I was 17. On my 18th birthday, I was able to take a competitive exam for the United States Army Air Corps cadet program. And I passed that, and then started my long routine to become a pilot.
Amazing. That's awesome. Can you tell us about when you were in the Air Corps and then going to the Air Force, your day-to-day role? What was your, most of the time, what was your role?
A pilot. Oh, no, I can't say most of my time. My younger years, a pilot. Up until 1954, my primary job was a pilot. And after 1954, I went into command and control. And from there, I still flew up until 1972. But my primary job was in command and control and as a commander of units and stuff like that.
Nice. What kind of planes were you flying?
Well, I flew the P-51, of course, in World War II, and I also flew it in Korea. And then I transitioned to F-80s, the first U.S. jet. And then just for flying, for keeping my time up and command and control, I flew the T-33. So I had a couple thousand hours of conventional time and a couple thousand hours of jet time.
Amazing. Did you ever dabble in helicopters at all?
I flew in helicopters and took the stick several times, but I never checked out in a helicopter.
That's a whole different
Yeah,
thing.
really wasn't that bad. I mean, it was completely strange to me the way the controls operated and stuff. But if I would have wanted to fly one, it wouldn't have been that difficult. I don't think for me to transition because I have had an affinity towards flying and just seemed to come natural to me.
Yeah, right on. All right. Is there a particular, out of your whole career, a particular memory that kind of stands out as a favorite experience or, best day on the job kind of thing?
There is one thing I like to say. It was at the end of my career when I was commanding units in NATO and in Germany, and there I got the reputation of being a good commander, and all the guys called me, and the women. I had a lot of women in my unit, and they called me Colonel Pete as a term of affection, and I still hear from them some time to time.
That's awesome. Why Pete?
Because my name is Peterburs.
Oh yeah, okay.
all those boys, our nickname was Pete. They get the answer to the phone. Well, is Pete there? Well, which one?
Yeah, which one? Right. That's awesome. Once you stopped flying and came home, how did your military service shape the rest of your life?
Well, actually, when I retired, I just put the military stuff behind me, and I got my master's degree, and I did some teaching, and then I just enjoyed. I had a pretty good sized yard, and I enjoyed gardening, and I retired in Colorado Springs, so enjoyed the outdoors and going out. And,
what kind of teaching were you doing?
I said public affairs.
Nice.
I had a master's in public affairs.
Right on. Kind of more about shaping your life. What personal values throughout your life have guided you when things get tough or when things are going well?
Well, what guided me is a sense of patriotism and loyalty and friendship and helping each other. I grew up I had 6 brothers and a sister, and during the Depression, and you had to really pitch in and know teamwork and things like that. And of course, I was as I was going through grade school, I was wanting to be a priest, and I had those skills, and by the time I was really 12, 13, 14 years old, I knew what I would be willing to die for, and that was my country and my God and my family.
Yeah, so that teaching of teamwork and stuff, that started as soon as you were born, basically.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
My brother and I were 5. I was 5, and he was 7, and we'd be pulling our wagons down the alleys, collecting bottles and iron and stuff, and selling them at the junkyard. And then they liked us so much that we got a job there, getting precious metal out of the car parts and getting a penny a pound for them. So.
Yeah, I remember.
And then we had the money we had earned, we'd hand it over to Mom. And,
of course, I remember collecting cans and bottles.
Yeah,
same thing with my buddies growing up, just to get some change.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. Were you raised in a Catholic household? Is that what inspired you to want to become a priest?
Mm-hmm.
Right on. All right. With do you have any advice you could give to younger generations, either kids that are interested in military service or not, just trying to lead a good life?
Yeah. Say that again.
It's the big one. Any advice to
Oh,
younger
yeah,
generations?
my best advice to the younger generations is number one, decide what you're going to do and pick out or develop your standards early and like I said at an early age I was willing to die for something. I was willing to die for three things that I know of, and I always felt that unless you believe in something strong enough that you're willing to die for it, life is hardly worth living. So and then as far as what they can do, they can just do their best, and the best will take care of everything else. And set a goal and concentrate on that goal, and don't let anything deter you from that goal, and achieve it. And it's okay if the goal changes, but whatever the goal you have, make sure you do your best at it, and don't be a slacker.
Of course, you need that purpose.
Yeah.
Something to strive for.
Yeah. Right.
And finally, as we wrap up, as you're turning 101, what are you most grateful for?
I'm most grateful for living. I had my military career was quite exciting, and that was okay.
I was gonna say, your family.
Oh yeah, of course my family. I mean, some things go without saying.
Right. But you need to share that.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
know.
tell me about your family a little bit.
See, when we retired in Colorado Springs, and my wife Josephine, we as soon as I got back from World War II, we got married, and we were married for 60 years, and I retired in Colorado Springs, and she had a stroke, and I was her sole caregiver for about 8 years, and then she passed away, and that basically ended my life as far as I was really bad off. But my grandson and his family and his wife, Sabrina, they saw that I was in deep depression, and they insisted, and they ended up convincing me that I should come here to California and live here with them. And I did, and it did change my life completely. I started a completely new life. I had the exhilaration of having two great granddaughters who, when I moved here, were 1 and 2 years old, and I had the privilege and opportunity to take care of them, and from time to time, and I sort of grew along with them. My passions and my interest in things became alive, and I was and of course Rick and Sabrina, I mean, they were keeping me going, and we were I started a new life. And I think maybe that's because I know I'd be dead by now if I would have just stayed in Colorado Springs and lived in the house and sat around moping and talking to other old people about their aches and pains. So,
Yeah, I mean, even that kind of ties back to what you're saying about keeping a purpose
Yeah,
in life, and
yeah.
keeping something,
absolutely.
a goal, even if it's to start a new, something to keep you young and keep you going. That's incredible. How many children do you have?
I had 4 boys. Yeah, the 2 of them are passed, and the ones I have a son 79 and a son 77.
Wow. That's awesome. Anything else you'd like to share that either I didn't ask, or any stories you had in mind that you wanted to share?
No, there's a whole book of stories I could tell.
I'm sure.
But this is the first interview that I've had that people haven't talked about my war record, and it's nice.
Good. Well, I'm glad It went well. We're excited to be doing this story.
Yeah.
And highlighting you. It's an incredible thing.
Yeah.
And, happy birthday.
Oh, thank you.
Talk about going to Belgium. You're leaving in.
Yeah, I hear you're going to Belgium.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. What's all that about?
Yeah. Well, I flew supporting the Battle of the Bulge, and we're going to the Battle of the Bulge area and with several other people, and we're going to be looking around there and probably giving talks and so.
It's the
Nice.
it's the
81st?
81st anniversary.
Yeah, 81st anniversary. Yeah.
Nice. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know some of the people going?
I don't know yet. Yeah, I think so.
We'll see. Yeah.
She remembers the names and the people. I remember the people and their faces and stuff, and I get a nudge.
It's such a good interview. I mean, it makes me so happy. And it makes me happy, his granddaughter, Sabrina, and I connected in order to get this story done. And, she sent me a really lovely text the day after the story aired, just thanking me. And I feel so strongly that elevating these stories of veterans is so important, because I know I'm going to sound like a broken record. I'm going to sound like your grandma or whatever, but these stories of elder wisdom are so important, because we forget it, and I'm guilty of this, right? But we're on social media. We just want the quick soundbite. We want the viral moment or whatever. And we don't take the time to really listen and really hear the wisdom that they learned. They didn't learn it from ChatGPT. They didn't learn it from some reality show. They learned it from life experience. And I think it is so underrated and undervalued in our society today to have that sort of, information and that sort of resource. Really, he's a resource. He's a wealth of information and knowledge. And so I'm just very grateful that I was able to share a small piece of that with you today. And I hope that you really enjoyed it. I certainly did. And happy birthday to Joe, 101 years old. Incredibly impressive, a wonderful life. He has a lot to be proud of. And I'm just grateful that we were able to share his story. So we're going to go ahead and take another break right here, and I'll see you on the other side. Welcome back. I'm going to go ahead and dive into our next story. I actually interviewed one of our reporters, Noah Anderson, and we talked about staffing, law enforcement staffing. So I want to just go ahead and jump into that interview. I'm going to play it, and I'll see you on the other side, okay? Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining us. I am here with Noah Anderson. He is one of our reporters here at Fox 40. And Noah, you're working on a story today. You're in the midst of it. I've been able to snag you for a couple of minutes to talk about it, but it has to do with law enforcement, specifically Sac Sheriff, Sac PD, and staffing, which is such a big topic. You're always hearing law enforcement agencies talk about staffing needs and sometimes staffing problems. So give us a little bit of a rundown on what you're working on today.
Yeah, that's right. So there was some new information, new research really, that was passed along from the Peace Officers Research Association of California. And what it found was really this is a statewide issue. And like you said, this is something that's really not new. This has been going on for quite some time now, but it really is a statewide issue. And this study has kind of shined a light really on a few areas, one of which being right here in Sacramento County, and dealing with, like you said, Sac PD and Sacramento Sheriff. So what it was is we went out there and we spoke with both officials, the sheriff and the police department. And we were just trying to gauge, is this something that truly is an issue here? And, I guess at that stage, what can we do about it? So that's kind of the general premise of the story. And it's something, as you said, we're still working on it as we speak right now. But, it is something too that could have an effect on 911 wait times and response times for certain calls. So definitely something that the community should know about.
So I want to get into some of like the why behind this. And obviously, you've talked to some law enforcement officials, but a lot of this is going to be speculative, right? Because some of the research, we don't know exactly why people might be less inclined to go into the law enforcement career path. But I want to ask you specifically, something I have personally heard from Sac Sheriff in particular, when they're talking about staffing, is there was sort of this change a couple of years ago with sentiment towards law enforcement and how that can sometimes discourage people from joining. Is this something that you heard about at all today?
Yes, absolutely. And that was actually really one of the major points, I feel like, in that study as well, is the public perception of law enforcement. Obviously, that changes really, I mean, day in and day out in some cases. And there's all kinds of, external factors that can have an impact on that. But basically what I was hearing is that, it's public perception. And right now it seems like more of the public perception happens to be negative towards law enforcement, and that the police or sheriff's office, I don't want to speculate necessarily, but some people don't have a fond understanding of what they're out there doing, even though when you boil it all down, it really is they're out there to serve the community and to help people really in maybe one of their darkest times or the darkest part of their day. So, there is that perception, and a lot of that, goes back years, and I was able to speak with them a little bit about that. But I also wanted to point out that, here in Sacramento, obviously, it's the sheriff's office and the police department that are serving the city, and really both of those sides at this point have kind of two different layers to how they're feeling about staffing right now.
Okay. And explain those layers a little bit. Explain how they're differing or maybe similar.
Right. So, and I'm still, we're still in the midst of this.
Yeah, no,
so
I know. You're literally, it's early in the day. It's early in the day. So whatever you can give us.
Yeah, absolutely. So basically the sheriff's office, they seem to be in an okay place right now. Even, a trending upwards place, being able to fill any vacancies that they have. I was able to speak with Sergeant Amar Gandhi today, and he said right now they're looking at about roughly 80 or so vacancies, which, you hear that number standing alone, you're like, wow, 80 vacancies, that seems like a lot. But they also have 3 different academies that they're doing throughout the year. So each year there's 3 different academies. And what he's telling me is that between those academies, there's usually 50 to 70 people in each of those academies. So if you're doing 3 of those a year, that's plenty of people. He also mentioned just last Sunday, there was about 200 people waiting in line to test and run for the academy. So it seems like they're getting quite a few people, quite a few community members that want to join. And Sergeant Gandhi also said, I can't remember necessarily the exact quote. It won't be an exact quote, but something to the effect of being a police officer is starting to become cool again.
Yeah.
So more people are interested in doing that.
Yeah.
Which is, something that I hadn't necessarily thought of, but it's a great point. And they obviously have the numbers to back that up right now. But, on the other side of it, SAC PD, they're going through some really trying times. It seems right now we don't have, the exact information right now, but they're going through some difficult spots. And that study, it really pointed out some of the issues that could arise, especially like I mentioned, the 911 calls, but also that they're having just a hard time recruiting people. And that could go back to the public perception. And there could be some, other variables that go into that as well.
I think it's really interesting. We're talking about hopefully what might be an upward trend for Sac Sheriff in particular, because these are actually really good jobs. Like when you look at, and I'm talking good jobs, like I'm talking pay and benefits and, the hours can be tough, but, you're working like 4 10s instead of 5 days a week. And so I think that a lot of people maybe once they realize the compensation that they're getting and some of the I don't want to say perks, but like excitement of the job and being outside and interacting with the community, it's actually a very desirable job for a lot of people.
Yeah. And I think that, like you said, that shows in the sheriff's office's recruitment right now. A lot of people are interested in that. And like you were saying, there are good benefits that come along with these jobs. And a lot of these jobs, specifically here in Sacramento County, they come with reasonable pay too, more than a lot of people would, at least myself too, and probably a lot of the public would think that they would be, offering for those positions.
Totally.
So it's really, I do think that at this point, it really might be just still that public perception, even though, the sheriff's office is going through one thing and the police department's going through another. That perception really is something that, each person has their own opinion and that can change day to day. And obviously social media is a big thing. And, things can happen on social media where a lot of the public goes to one side on a certain issue. And that can dictate a lot of things. So,
well, I want to touch on something with the public perception. Let's be blunt, right? When this sort of public perception shift happened a couple of years ago, it was a lot of talking about police brutality, unnecessary use of force. Like those were a lot of the things that people took issue with when they started seeing body camera footage. And something really interesting that a Sacramento County Sheriff's deputy told me one time, just this year, right? We're talking about Sac Sheriff had that incident. I don't know if you remember at the main jail where that deputy was actually taken off of the force, let go completely, is now facing a separate, criminal investigation and trial for shoving a woman on body camera footage.
Yep.
And then we also have Lincoln Police more recently, that officer who is no longer with the force because he's now been charged with some, minor sex crime, not minor sex crimes on a minor. They are not minor sex crimes.
Yep.
They are major on a minor. And so they got rid of him. And it makes me think about something that a deputy told me. He said, nobody hates a bad police officer more than a good police officer, because he was saying it's in our best interest not to protect these people, because a lot of people think, oh, it's sort of like the good old boys. They protect one another. They cover things up. And he said to me, it is in our best interest to get rid of as many officers who are not living up to the standard that we have, because it makes us look bad and it plays into that public perception that people have. And so, I'm just curious in talking to law enforcement and just in your general reporting. I mean, do you find that kind of like the few bad apples, whatever, but like, do you find that to be the general sentiment? I mean, are these officers and deputies, wanting to weed out the people who maybe slipped through the cracks?
I would say absolutely.
Yeah.
And, like you were mentioning, these law enforcement officials that see what happens and like you were saying, the instances, which are few and far between, in my opinion, of law enforcement officers getting into either, criminal or legal trouble themselves.
Yeah.
Those are far and few between.
Yep.
So those are, like you said, the bad apples, but the majority, the vast majority of law enforcement officials, in my experience and, speaking to them, day in and day out here doing this job, is that they want the best for the community.
Yeah.
And so they're always working to make sure that the community comes first. But like you said, there are those bad apples. Mm-hmm. And when those stories arise, those always are coming to the forefront.
Yeah. And we work in media. We know that. I mean, we know that those are the stories that we glom onto and we kind of put out there.
Right. And that, that's part of it at the same time. Those are big stories and those are worth covering and bringing to light, because they are very important to cover.
Yes.
But at the same time, when you think about it, that's, one story from one day. And there's, first of all, tons of law enforcement officers in the city.
Yes.
And they're each responding to several calls, I'm sure, each day.
Yes.
So that's just, it's just a really, small part of it, but they're big stories. But yeah, the vast majority of law enforcement is absolutely, they're working and, actively working to find issues in the community and trying to resolve those issues. It's just, it's unfortunate. Just like with anybody, any job, there are bad apples and people do bad things. And when that happens, you have to hold those people accountable.
Well, that's exactly correct. It's about holding people accountable. And that's something here on this show, Service Matters. And Service Matters is something I do, on our normal broadcast channel as well. And the point of it is because we do need to cover those bad apple stories, because they need to be held accountable. And it is important when law enforcement is taking advantage of their position of power or, manipulating people or something like that. It's really important that we tell the community about that. But unfortunately, just the way that the news cycle goes, it's not nearly as exciting when the run-of-the-mill, everyday, normal, good things are happening. So that's why it's important, and why I like having a show like this, Service Matters, and being able to highlight sort of the other side of it and talk about the bad side of it too. I mean, we're sitting here talking about police brutality and that deputy that was shoving that woman and all that. I mean, we're talking about both sides of it, but unfortunately, and I'm sure that, law enforcement would speak to this, between social media and frankly, just the news cycle, sometimes it's hard to highlight some of those, I won't even say good, but just normal, happenings that happen within law enforcement agencies. Sometimes it's hard to get that message out. So I'm sure that they're combating that as well.
Yeah. And, I feel like that normal is, that's something that, we don't report on. Normal,
right.
That's not really newsworthy, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So, those often do slip through the cracks. But yeah, obviously these officers are doing a lot. And I also wanted to touch back on the point that you made that, we are often covering these, bad instances and we're bringing those to light, like the officer that you had mentioned that had shoved the woman at the main jail and the other officer that was arrested for those other crimes that he had committed as well. But another interesting side of, covering those stories and covering those bad apples per se is that sometimes there are other victims or other people in the community that see things related to those people.
Yes.
So when we are able to cover those stories and bring that information out into the community, it can, first of all, help law enforcement.
Yes.
It can help the community. And it kind of bridges that gap between, just the general community, law enforcement, and us in the media as kind of coming together in a sense to, make sure that people have this information. And if there's somebody that knows something, that they can hopefully then report that so that more people are held accountable, or they're held accountable to a certain degree, so
Yeah.
that, everybody remains safe.
Yeah, that's a great point. It definitely has sort of like a ripple effect of helping people in all different facets of the community. The last thing that I wanted to ask you about is, we think about law enforcement as it is a public service, right? It's our taxpayer dollars. Sacramento City Police Department, Sacramento County Sheriff's Office. Sheriff is an elected position, but these are taxpayer money, and so we think about them as being sort of like city organizations. But at the end of the day, they're like a business. They need to recruit just the way that a private business would, and they need to put their best foot forward just the way that we as a private, media organization need to try and hire good people and recruit. And so there's also this element, I think, that I've noticed in the past couple of years that I want to ask you about, where these officers, they got into law enforcement because they want to serve their community, because they, feel a sense of gratitude and, a sense of, indebtedness to their community. They want to give back. They want to, get bad guys, whatever, right? But they didn't get into it to like make social media videos about what they do. And they didn't get into it to like be interviewed and talk about it. And I have found that many times where an on-duty deputy or police officer, I'm like, oh, this would be such a good like TikTok or whatever, like, let me film you. And they don't want to be filmed. And I'm this is such a niche thing, so you probably didn't talk to them, but I would just love your opinion on this. I mean, to me, I see that as a hurdle too, sometimes with law enforcement, where you have to get the people, it doesn't always like match up, the kind of people that like want to be police officers and the kind of people that like want to be in recruitment videos and making things look like sexy and exciting.
Yeah, well, I will also say shout out to both Amar Gandhi with the Sheriff's Office and their whole kind of media relations and communications team, because they put together some almost like crime highlight reels. They do a lot of
like
things like that, like a movie, music. They do it up, and there's a lot of things like that. But a lot of these people too, they're they take their job very seriously.
Yes.
So when you do something and you want to record something, or it's something a little bit more on the silly side or whatever you may have like that, a lot of these people, they're just they're trying to just do their job at the same time. And
great point.
I think each and every one of us, no matter what your job is, if you have the best job in the world, at some point, maybe during your workday, you're like, I think maybe a nap would be nice right now. So, maybe you're not always ready to go for something fun that somebody else is thinking about too. But, I think, all these law enforcement officers, they're just normal people at the same time. They're doing the same things that we're doing. They go get their groceries, they do all the same things that we do. So, it's sometimes you find somebody when they're, have more on their mind, and you never know what's going on in somebody's personal life too. So I think there's just so many factors to it, but it's honestly, it's amazing that the work that the law enforcement, especially here in the Sacramento area, does.
They do an amazing job. Seriously, like some of those videos look like they're like crime fighting movies.
It's like, unbelievable. I saw one of them today. Yeah. And it was, I honestly asked for some of the video to not be in the highlight reel, but all we got is the highlight reel. So we'll take it, I guess, at this point. That's
awesome. Well, Noah, thank you so much. And your story in full, after it airs tonight, it's going to be up on our website, fox40.com, so people can go watch it. And I'm sure you'll have information there too if people are interested in these organizations or want to learn more about how they might be able to join. I'm sure we'll have some info about that as well.
That's absolutely right. Yep. Online and, every social media, YouTube, whatever it may be. And we'll have more info on fox40.com.
All right. Noah Anderson, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Take care, and we'll talk to you soon. Right. That was our interview with Fox 40's Noah Anderson. We're going to take a quick break, and we will debrief the topic on the other side of this break. All right, welcome back. A really interesting interview with Noah. I think that this is such a fascinating topic because this is a trend that we have seen nationwide, and Noah mentioned that, but this is not new, that law enforcement recruitment numbers are dropping. And we have also seen it in the military, by the way, in the past 5 years. But it's a very interesting phenomenon because we think about like career day in kindergarten and these jobs that are highly regarded and highly respected, a police officer, a doctor, a lawyer, right? And so some of that prestige has sort of fallen away in the past couple of years with law enforcement. And I would say that that's unfortunate because it is such an important job and it's such a necessary job. And it's a job that without our society would be in chaos, right? I mean, utter chaos. And I think what's really interesting with law enforcement when I talk to them is all of them have this common thread where they love being a resource for people on the worst day of their lives. They are the ones who are showing up when everything else is going wrong. And so sometimes, sort of unfairly, they're associated with negative interactions, right? Because you're not calling 911 just to let them know that you're having a great day and, asking their Starbucks order, right? You're calling 911 because there is an emergency happening. And so a lot of the times, uh, either you see something on social media like Noah and I talked about, and you make assumptions and judgments about law enforcement, or you have an interaction with law enforcement, but it's not a positive one, because sort of the nature of the situation when you're dealing with law enforcement are usually not positive situations. And so law enforcement sort of has to work double time to try and counteract some of those more negative experiences. And again, I said it to Noah, but that's why something like Service Matters is so important, because it gives a platform and an opportunity for law enforcement to talk about their day to day. Again, it's about highlighting the positive stories, but it's not even about highlighting the positive. It's just about highlighting the normal, because the normal for law enforcement is they show up, they help a situation, they make it better, things are okay, and then they leave, right? That's like actually the normal flow. But we hear about some of these like out of this world instances. Literally last night, I was out in Roseville reporting on a deputy involved shooting with the Placer County Sheriff's Office, where a Placer County Sheriff's deputy shot and killed an armed man in a park last night in West Roseville. The man was charging the officer with a large knife. They tried to de-escalate the situation. They tried to stop him, and he ran at him with a knife. And so the deputy discharged his firearm and killed the suspect. And that was on the news, right? Because like that is a very newsworthy thing to happen. And as is like sort of protocol with these officer involved shootings, a different agency takes over the investigation. So in this case, it's the Placer County District Attorney's Office, and the deputy who shot and killed the suspect is on administrative leave until that investigation is complete, to make sure that they followed proper protocols, and used other means of de-escalation, or less lethal methods, before shooting and killing the suspect. So, but again, that is a lot of what people see on the news, right? And they don't see a lot of like a traffic stop that ends with a warning, and as it turns out, the guy's car has a flat tire and the officer helps him change it. Like that happens all the time too, but we don't get to show that as much because there's a limited amount of hours in a day and a limited amount of hours in a newscast. And so I really appreciate being able to talk about these things and give them a little bit of elevation, because I feel so strongly about them. So, anyways, Noah Anderson's story is going to be airing Wednesday, the 26th, in our 4, 5, 6 o'clock newscasts. And then, of course, it will live on fox40.com, where you can find out more information like Noah was talking about. So that's today's episode. Thank you so much for joining us for this Service Matters. As always, have a wonderful week. Happy Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving is tomorrow on the day we're recording this. So happy Thanksgiving. Wishing many blessings and goodness and happiness for you and your loved ones this holiday season. All right, we'll see you back here next week.